final question here, because I think that it's like a perfect segue into the online conversation about USAID and what that organization truly was. I know that you speak. Am I correct that you speak Spanish? That you speak fluent Spanish? You spent some considerable time. You spent considerable time in Central America, right?
Yeah, I was a missionary in the lower Rio Grande Valley on the Texas side. Nobody spoke Spanish in that era. We're talking about down in the McAllen, Texas area. So I had to learn Spanish. It was sink or swim.
So my question is, I hear a lot of people, a lot of little birdies, chirp at me about what's going on. They're not done with USAID. There's going to be some major reveals about what was actually happening inside of that organization. They're going to be devastating and potentially criminal. As somebody who's so good at rooting out fraud and abuse in government, can you please encapsulate, like, what was USAID? Why are the Democrats bankrupt now? The DNC is $3 million in debt. Why is the right winning in now what is a landslide throughout Central America after the defunding of USAID? Is there a connection there, Senator?
Yeah, there may well be. I mean, first of all, let's remember, Benny, that Marxism is flawed, and any system rooted in it, whether operating under the auspices of socialism, of communism, whether it's calling itself fascism or any of the other Marxist flavors, it doesn't work. And whenever it's used, it fails. And you can deceive some of the people some of the time. You can't deceive most of the people most of the time. And eventually it catches up with you. Now, as to the connection between the demise of USAID funds, their non-availability, and the election of governments that no longer embrace Marxism, let me just say this. Starting about 10 years ago, about 10 or 11 years ago was when I first started hearing about a potential connection between USAID funds and election outcomes in various countries throughout Central, South America, Europe, and elsewhere, tilting sharply to the left. The way it happened was a handful of people would come in and ask for a meeting with me. Many of them were government officials, members of elected lawmakers from various, usually smaller countries, Europe, Central America, South America, wherever, who started suggesting, well, I can't prove it completely. I have it on somewhat good authority that USAID funds are routinely being funneled through various channels and directed into funds that themselves will facilitate left-wing candidates. And that those are then commingled with George Soros money and other, radical leftist donor money in order to springboard these leftist candidates around the world, especially in smaller countries where American dollars can go a long way toward tilting the outcome. And that's very often how more conservative, more liberty-minded governments are losing to Marxist-inspired candidates and governments. And so that was a source of great frustration. I looked into it. In some circumstances, there appeared to be real credibility to it. And that's why I started raising red flags about USAID about a decade ago. When the funding was finally withdrawn in the last year or so, I thought, okay, we will see now what impact that might make. I can say this, the anecdotal evidence since then suggests that there may well have been a stunning connection between USAID funding and the election of left-wing governments around the world, especially in smaller countries.
And terrorism. And drug smuggling.
Too.
And it's
that too. Oof. Look, when the U.S. government writes blank checks, whether at home or abroad, it should shock no one that those things will be subject to waste, fraud, and abuse. And it should shock no one that those funds will eventually be used to help advocate for Marxism in one form or another at home and abroad.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It really does beg the question. The Marxist sweep yesterday in New York. Every single one of those Marxists were either foreign born or their parents were foreign born, and they came here with such a deep understanding of American funding systems. And it's like, well, this is the farm team, obviously. This is what Barack Obama's talking about with his Obama Foundation. This is what they're creating.
I'm really happy about the Supreme Court's rulings. This is what happens when you put people on the court who are there to interpret the law based on what the law says, rather than on the basis of what social scientists want or what leftist professors are advocating for. They're interpreting the law, and they interpreted the law correctly in both of these cases. They got it right, and I think that'll help.
So what you're telling me is that that's what judges should do. They shouldn't be going off of just vibes and their NPR podcast that they listen to, like Judge Sprinkle Sparkle, right. I think is actually her given name, Judge Sprinkle Sparkle. Judge Sparkle.
But, I mean, there are a lot of people with common names among jurists. I'm not aware of any other Judge Sparkle, any other judge's name Sparkle. So it's unique. At least you won't be confused. Having a common name like Mike, it was not uncommon to have 3, 4, 5 other guys in each class in elementary school with the same name. But I bet she didn't have that problem. So that's good.
So
but look, the word temporary does mean temporary. And the concept of asylum, in the other case you mentioned, is itself permissive. Asylum has never been a mandatory issue. It is a permissive issue. In other words, the U.S. government may allow such persons in as they deem eligible for asylum. That doesn't mean they have to take anyone and everyone who comes in under any circumstance.
So you keep, I think it's just like the mandate from heaven that you have. Because you've been telling us for what feels like years now about the Save America Act. And with every passing week, Senator, a new man-made horror beyond comprehension happens that proves that the Save America Act must be passed, whether it's the LA mayor's race, whether it's the communists that won in New York, whether it's Judge Sparkle saying that the federal government doesn't have the right to check Social Security numbers. All of this, of course, all of this madness would be done away with if we had the Save America Act.